Now, being made redundant is on the rise for people in their 60s in recent months, especially in light of the pandemic. New research has found older workers are less likely to receive workplace training and, once made redundant, significantly more likely to suffer long-term unemployment. Joining me now is Stuart Lewis, founder of Rest Less. Good morning to you. First of all, tell us what Rest Less is and why you decided to set it up in the first place.
So Rest Less is a digital community for the over 50s, and we set it up to help people manage that transition that they often come up to in their 50s or 60s, recognising that the idea of retirement doesn't really exist anymore today. Actually, many of us simply can't afford to retire, so helping people manage that transition and multiple transitions in that stage of life.
And what sort of advice do you give? How have you been able to help people to manage that transition, as you say?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because people in their 50s or 60s may have been in the same career for 20, 30 years. They're a long way out of the education system where they're taught how to answer competency-based interview questions or how to prepare for CV algorithmic screening. So we give tailored advice to those type of questions, how to get a CV on 2 sides of A4 if you've got 4 decades of work experience, and also how to try and address a common age bias such as you're overqualified, something that many of our members hear time and time again, actually, when applying for roles.
And what are some of the other biases that they experience? Obviously, you're saying with so much experience, it's very hard to condense that into a one-page CV. But what are some of the other problems that older people encounter?
We often talk about it as the last socially acceptable form of prejudice, actually, and some of the comments we hear are really quite devastating. Anything from second-order bias, such as you're overqualified, which the recruiter is typically trying to ascertain if they'll be difficult to manage or if they will get bored quickly and disappear. But rather than addressing that, they get lumped together as overqualified. We have seen examples where people have been told things like, when are you going on your next cruise? Or even as blatant as, you remind me of your mum and I don't want my mum working here, which is absolutely devastating for someone's self-esteem when they're going for interviews.
Yeah, awful. And what's been the particular experience of those over 60 in the employment field during the pandemic?
It's been hard. So the analysis we pulled from ONS data showed that there'd been a near quadrupling of redundancies amongst those in their 60s between the second and the third quarter of this year. And I think this is an issue for 3 main reasons. So firstly, this is the canary in the coal mine. So the data we analysed was to the end of September, and we expect significant further deterioration as we head into the end of the year, following further national lockdowns. There's currently over 600,000 over 50s claiming universal credit, to give you a sense of how financially precarious many of this generation are. And actually, we're particularly concerned that there's an additional 500,000 over 55s on furlough at the end of September. So we're significantly concerned that this is just the start of what is to come. I think one really important point I'd like to make, though, is it's not about pitting young against old. So we know there's a youth unemployment crisis, and the government has rightly been really swift to act there. But often there's this idea that there are a set number of jobs in an economy and that redundancies of those nearing retirement frees up jobs for the young. And that's a complete fallacy in a service-led economy. And most economists widely acknowledge that jobs create more jobs in aggregate. And this results in higher level of spending. So actually, redundancies for those in their 60s, if they're more likely to fall into long-term unemployment, which statistically they are, this will be devastating for the entire economy and labour market and not just those directly impacted.
And what you're talking about essentially is discrimination, isn't it? I mean, isn't that covered in law, that it's illegal to discriminate against an individual on the basis of age?
It absolutely is. So age is a protected characteristic since the Equalities Act. What we see is that people are either not aware of this en masse, or it's just not a focus for many organisations. And something we're talking around is the benefits of an age-diverse workforce, especially when we're looking at the demographic trends that are going to happen over the next 10, 20 years. They are often happier workforces in aggregate and lead to great diversity of thoughts. There's a lot of benefits to having age-diverse workforces, and it's something we're promoting the benefits of continually, actually.
And what routes do older people have to challenge this form of discrimination? Well, what's the advice that you give your members?
So ACAS is the government-funded reconciliatory service which tries to bridge gaps or disagreements between employers and individuals. So they've been very busy in this year, as you might imagine, but it's definitely worth speaking to those people and speak to them as quickly as you can, because there's a time limit for any claims that need to be made.
OK, good advice. Stuart Lewis, founder of Restless, thanks for speaking to us this morning.